being silly. Hello. Hi. Welcome to Yoga and Other Shit. Today we have Meghan DeFord on, and we're just going to get right into it and let her explain who she is. Just kidding. But I will say that I met Meghan through a friend of ours, Jen Siski, which I'm sure you all have heard me talk about on here about running and stuff, because she runs these crazy marathons all the time. So Meghan, how did you meet Jen? We'll start there, and
Yeah,
then we'll talk about our little adventure that we
yeah,
had.
absolutely. So I met Jen through a running group that I'm a part of and actually help lead in South Florida. And she's awesome. And we met under much more fun circumstances than running multiple miles at 5:30 in the morning um, at a birthday party. And
Ah,
I think pina coladas and things like that were involved, which was very fun.
very fun. Yes, pina
Yeah.
colada. Hope not too many, because that's how I met you, and I was so envious of your little. I got a
I dipped
thing.
early. I dipped
Yeah,
early. I was like, I could feel like, I think I said, because we did like the tiki boat thing, which was
yeah.
super fun. And then we had like food and drinks. And then when the suggestion was to go to another bar, I was like, no, it's not. We were having such a great time. It's not going to transfer. And I just dipped out. So it was a good move for me.
I love that because it is true. And I growing up, when I say growing up, I mean age 27, because, well, that's a long story. That's when I really was able to taste different drinks. And
Mm.
I was very naive on even how to make a drink.
Hmm.
So my philosophy now is kind of, it's a 2 to 3 drink. That's all. That's
Yeah,
like my happy place. 3 drinks. That's over a longer period of time.
sure.
So
Sure.
you will see me. I don't know if you saw me that night. Do the old when.
I did not.
Yeah. So we were carrying our. You were there with us. We were
Uh-huh.
walking to the next place. That's when
Yes.
you had your Uber,
Yeah.
and I had the full drink that somebody bought me. I don't remember who it was, but I was like, I took a few sips and then whoosh,
Whoop.
over the
Over the shoulder.
in the
Yeah. Smart.
bush.
Smart. Very
That's
smart.
my yeah, because I don't want to offend, but I also don't want to be sick. So that
Yeah.
was my thing. But anyway, so Jen was with us, and that's
Yeah.
how we met, and it was fun. And but I wish that you were there for the talking part, uh, to get to know you more, because I know it was like Jen had said that you had a podcast,
Yeah.
which we will talk about, and so I like wanted to get all into it, but then we ended up talking about something else. I forget,
I know.
and
Well, it
so
was
I did.
funny because it was like, wait, you have a podcast? Wait, you do yoga? Wait, you run? It was like, are we new best friends? Like,
Yeah.
this is great. But then, yeah, I dipped and we didn't have enough time to talk. So this is very fun.
Yeah, so here we are. So, yes, Meghan has a podcast. I'm skipping
Yes.
over what I was going to talk about, but since we
That's okay.
mentioned it, we'll just go that way. So,
Sure.
it's called Wait, What Do You Do Again?
Yeah.
So, tell us about that. And you just had, when was your year? I just saw that it
It's
was,
coming up. Yeah,
okay.
it's coming up. So thank you so much. Yeah, wait, what do you do again? Was an idea that I had for a long time. And last July, I was like, just do it. Right. And I
Yes.
have this thing about if it's not perfect, it's really hard for me to get started. Or if I don't know all the steps, like it's really hard for me to do something. And that's something that I'm working on. And the podcast has been great for that. I was like, allow yourself to not be good at something at first and put it out in the world and just be okay with it. And so my best friend Casey was my first guest,
Uh,
and she was just so supportive of me. And actually, I like put kind of all the pieces together in her kitchen, like in her home when I was
oh,
visiting. And so that was great. It was like a perfect first guest to have. And the idea behind the podcast is just regular people doing amazing things. And I've spent the majority of my career in philanthropy, and I've met so many interesting people, and some people's names you would know, but the vast majority of people you will never know who they are, right? Like they're just regular people, and everybody has such an interesting story. So that was really the idea behind the podcast. Is the other thing too is sometimes people are like, oh, I work in finance. And I'm like, cool. And I'm like, what the heck is finance? Like, I don't really know what that is. Or like, or, I do yoga and you're like, oh, that's cool. But once you get into it, you're like, oh, this is not what I thought, it was, or you have this interesting perspective on it or whatever. So I just talk to people about whether it's work or hobbies or, an experience that they have, whatever really they want to talk about. And it's been really, really fun. And we've had a diverse group of people on. This past week, we had Dr. Forteau on, who is a leadership coach, 30 years in leadership, as well as a dog musher. And he's actually
Oh,
doing the Iditarod. And I was like, no one's a dog musher. So it was really cool. Those are the kind of the stories. It's like, just how did you get into this? And what is it like? And just all of those sorts of things. And it's been a really, really fun experience.
yeah, that I agree. It is fun. I don't have as many, or I should say,
Mm-hmm.
my girls are both traveling. They
Yeah.
are traveling fools, and I'm just stuck at home. I am going to Morocco later, but
Ooh.
your guest list, I mean, just is amazing. How do you get these guests? I mean, are you like emailing? How do you track them down?
Yeah. So part of starting a podcast, I wasn't sure how I was going to find guests, which is like sort of a problem when you're a guest based podcast. But I was like, just do it. You know enough people that you can get like the first couple episodes in and then you can figure it out. So I found community groups actually on Facebook. Like I don't use Facebook really except for this and the running group I'm part of. And I found some really good groups where people will put themselves out there as a guest and sort of have their bio sheet. And then I have put out a few times, like, this is my podcast if you're interested. And, I think as I've had more episodes and people can hear what I'm saying and go to my website, I've gotten more interesting people actually reaching out to me as well. And then there's a few like agents, I guess that's the right way, like who have said, I talked to one of their guests and then they're like, oh, I have someone else I think you should talk to, and that sort of thing. So that's been really cool. Just getting to know people. I don't know if you've had this experience. There have been a few people that just it's not the right fit, right? And that's also been a good learning experience of like, it's my podcast. Like, don't feel bad about saying to someone like, this actually isn't the right fit for my show. And that's very empowering, but also you feel kind of bad, but it's been really fun. And that's how I find them. And I do try and mix it up. There's a few guests. So if anyone's listening and wants to be on the show, please, go to my website, megdeford.com, and you can actually submit to be a guest. But I really would love to talk to like a clergy member. I would love to talk to a neurologist. I'm so curious about like, what is a thought? Like, what is a thought? Like, I like when you start thinking about these things, like I talked to a sleep specialist,
Oh,
which was
cool.
wild. Like sleep is so wild. And we were talking about dreams. Like, what are dreams? What's the prevailing science about dreams? And sort of there's cultural and spiritual ideas around dreams and what do we know from the science as well. And it made me think, I was like, what do we know about the brain? What don't we know about the brain? What is a thought? All these things. So if there's anybody with that specialty, I would love to talk to them. So I do kind of put those things out there as well. If it's to really just kind of my interest of like, what is this stuff?
That's cool. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm trying to get more guests on that don't necessarily connect with like the whole yoga thing or
Hmm.
not, but same thing. I've just grown curious about,
Hmm.
when you go to a party and you talking to
Yes.
somebody and they tell you what they do and you're just like, what?
Yeah.
That is so cool. Or even if it seems weird, you're just fascinated by this
Yeah.
different, I've done hair,
Hmm.
all my life basically. I went to trade school. I didn't get to go to college, which we're going to talk about next. And um, so there's so much stuff that in my life kind of path I didn't get to experience,
Hmm.
and it's so fun to find out, talking to people that have gone to school to be doctors
Mhm.
or lawyers and how long that can take. Or I'm reading a book now where one of this guy, it's kind of a biography type thing. It's called The Book of Murder, but
Ooh,
it's a DA talking about who he's working with and all the cases that they've had to go over and the weirdest ones and the
yeah.
saddest ones and stuff like that. But he was saying in there that his friend in California, and I don't know if it's true or not, but this is the type of stuff I need to find somebody like this who I guess just went and was able to take the bar exam without doing the undergrad
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah.
I know there's a whole, TV show about that. But I was like, that I want to find out because that, even though it sounds like the easy way out, it's
The
not.
hard. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot harder. Yeah, it's a lot harder. And I think that like I feel like we'd both be really good at cocktail parties, right? Like I'm the person that like finds out. I'm like, did you talk to so and so and do and connect people and whatever. But I think even jobs that are more like I don't want to say mundane, but we all think we know, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody thinks they know what a hairstylist does. And when we were talking, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is again, it's a whole world and a whole universe that you don't get to experience unless you're in it." Or like a friend of mine, I'm trying to get her on the show and she was like, "Oh my god, I could never." But she's a middle school principal and I was like, "I want to know everything," right? Like and
Yeah.
and it seems like a teacher, you're like, oh, I know what teachers do. We have no clue, right? So it's so fun to talk to people and find out what they do, what makes them tick, what are they reading, like
Yeah.
and one of the threads that I've encountered, I don't know if you've encountered this, but like no one really knows what they're doing most of the time. And a lot of people have had more failure than success in life. And that's also really reassuring when you see that
Yes.
across ages and across industries and across experiences and socioeconomic class. It's like what really ties us as humans is how we learn and how we come together in community. And there's something so beautiful about that when you're hearing about these individual stories that are so unique, and then there's so much that connects all of us, which is just like such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Like in all their struggles and failures, there are different struggles and failures that we've had, but
Yeah.
it is nice to know. And you were talking about feeling the need to have things be perfect,
Yeah.
and I'm like not. I'm the opposite,
Yeah.
and so I've felt my way through things a lot and been like, oh, that didn't work,
Right. Right.
and like right before we came on, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'll continue to do this, maybe
Maybe
I
not.
don't know,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I don't know, I just probably a little too much fly by the seat of my
Mm.
pants, but it happens. But anyway, so podcast. Um, I know we're going to talk about philanthropy, but I
Yeah.
first want to talk about when you went to college, the
Yeah.
University of Maryland.
Yeah.
Like, did you go? What did you major in? Was it that, or was it something totally different? Again,
Something
like,
totally different. Yeah. So
love it.
I grew up in like a really rural part of Maryland. So in Maryland we talk about counties, right? So I'm from Howard County in this western part of it. There was farmland, it was great. It was like an idyllic childhood.
Yeah,
But by the time I hit high school, it was like I got to get beyond this, right? Like nothing wrong with my hometown, I just wanted more. And so of course that meant like going to NYU or like UCLA or something like that. That was not in the cards, especially financially. And my brother and sister went to Maryland. My mom, raised by a single mom, she didn't go to college. My dad didn't go to college, but he wasn't part of my life. And I was like, ugh, no way am I going to Maryland. And then when it was my turn to like visit, my mom was very smart and like did not do the visit with me. So I did the whole thing by myself and I was like, okay, this is like pretty great. I love it. So big school, 45 minutes away, in-state tuition, flagship, awesome. So I really thought I was going to do journalism. I actually started like journalism. I was thinking maybe computer science, like, but really I wanted to be like a writer for Vogue, right? Or Bazaar. Like I grew up reading those magazines and just like being transported to other places and glamorous people and parties. And 9/11 happened. And it was interesting because it really motivated a lot of people. And this was my first year. And it was like month one, that this happened. And we're seeing the journalists and seeing what's happening. And then the Iraq invasion, and, it galvanized some people and made it more solid in their mind. And for me, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that, and I will say, I don't think I knew what college was about. I don't think I approached it the way that I would now, or that like how I would tell my kids to approach it. And I went into English and I loved it. I loved my degree. I was English, rhetoric, language, and writing. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I had a lot of amazing professors, but I had this amazing professor junior year. I'll never forget him. Peter Lancelot Malleos. I mean, what an amazing name.
Yes.
And he was like a foremost Joseph Conrad scholar, like Heart of Darkness, but he started his career, had this amazing pedigree, like this incredible academic background. And he was a corporate lawyer, very, very, very successful for like 15 years, and he hated it. And it was like really an expectation of his family. It really wasn't a choice. And then he finally one day was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And he went to get his PhD, and he loved what he was doing. And I asked him, I was like, I need advice about law. I don't really know how to do this. And he was like, do me a favor and work for 1 year. And if you still really want to go to law school, awesome. But if you don't, just be open to kind of like what happens next. So that's what I did. I graduated with my degree. I, again, loved my education. What I will tell, if any of your listeners are thinking about liberal arts, or have kids that are thinking about liberal arts, or just want to defend the liberal arts, it's a way of thinking and critical thinking that I don't think we give enough credit to. And I really think we're missing something with such a focus on STEM. And I love science. I love math. I love technology, all of that. But by not applying that overlay of a liberal arts to it, I think we're really missing something, and sort of that humanity. And the way that I approach the world is so different because of my education. And I'm so grateful for that. But so anyway, long story long,
Very cool.
I was an English major. Everybody was like, what are you going to do with that? And I'm like, well, I don't know. And I was on federal work study, and I worked in the admissions office. So like undergraduate admissions, answered phones, things like that. And they were hiring, and I was lucky enough to get a job. I don't know why they hired me. I was a crazy person. But I loved it. So like I was the person that went out to high schools across the country and talked about Maryland and like recruited kids. And then we would come back and we read applications, made decisions. And then right after decisions are released, it's sort of twofold. You're talking to the families who didn't get in, right? And you're talking to them. And then you're also trying to yield the students that did get in. So it's sort of this balance. It was amazing. It was so much fun. We made no money. There was a group of us, I think about 5 or 6 of us, who did it at the same time. And we just had this little cadre. We were all like 22, 23. I still am in touch with most of those people. My best friend Matt and I met through that job. I mean, it was wonderful. And I learned so much about just how to be an adult and a professional. So I sort of fell into that, and I loved it. And then within that, and this was actually at University of Maryland, I think I mentioned that, yeah. And there was a role for someone in undergraduate admissions to work with alumni and donors. So really, if a student applied, really just kind of hand-holding them through the process, they didn't get extra consideration. Like it didn't actually really matter that whoever recommended them was a donor, but it was really just keeping them involved in the process, especially if they weren't going to get in, kind of giving them a heads up and why, that sort of thing. And so that opened my eyes to this whole world of alumni associations and fundraising and philanthropy. And one thing that you hear a lot from fundraisers is they fell into it. Like, I think it's become more professionalized. Like I do actually meet a lot of younger professionals that like knew they wanted to do this in undergrad and then went into master's programs or whatever. I'm seeing more of that. I think some of the older guard sort of fell into it somehow. We all sort of have these stories. And like one of my mentors who I just absolutely adored, he was a professional runner. Like he was sponsored by ASICS. And then he got into philanthropy later, so like it's just really interesting stories and backgrounds. And so that's how I got into philanthropy. I ended up transferring from undergraduate admissions into the Alumni Association and, really fell in love with it. So it certainly was not anything I grew up with. Like we didn't have money at all. The most philanthropy that I was aware of was like growing up Catholic and every week, like giving in the collections and, kind of understood it from that perspective, but not anything that I would end up doing.
Wow. Yeah. And I didn't know that. I thought it was more of people kind of falling into it
Mhm.
or stepping into it, not like you can actually go to school for that.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah. And
cool.
it's more at the graduate levels, but there
Okay.
are programs, especially within like there's some comms programs, there's some education programs that like, or even in business, like volunteer management and things like that I just think the profession has become so professionalized, which is a good thing that a lot of times people will go into psych, but know they want fundraising or go into comms and know they want fundraising and have that eye toward it, or do educational leadership with an eye toward philanthropy or, things like that. That was not my case. I didn't even know it was a job. I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know it was a thing. I mean, I knew it was like out there, but I never thought of like what was the mechanism behind it. Right. And I think that's actually, as I'm saying this out loud, I think that's when philanthropy has done really well is it highlights the donor and the cause and the impact. And I think you don't think about the machine behind it that's getting the process done, right?
Yeah.
And so I always just saw the nice glossy photos of the donor and the kid or whatever it is, right? And I had no idea there was a whole apparatus and industry behind it.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know why I always think of it as like the gala, the whole thing that you said about journalism and the lights and the
Yeah,
fanfare and all that, and that's how I think of philanthropy,
right,
like the galas, the fundraising
right.
galas with the beautiful gowns and
Like the
all that
Met
stuff.
Gala that just happened. And yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, that's definitely a part of it. And I think it's interesting because I think culturally, galas and big events are still very popular in areas like New York, South Florida, LA. There's certain areas that really still thrive on that environment. I think even in politics, the like $500,000 plate dinners and things like that. I think it's just culturally part of certain areas of philanthropy in certain areas of the country. I, like many, actually move away from that as a major fundraiser for a lot of reasons. I mean, it's a lot of time and energy and money to put into an event that really you could be out meeting more people in a sense. But I also think it's a good way to bring your community together. So there's sort of a lot of people are moving away from event fundraising, and I think it's overall a good thing. I just it's interesting because like the Met Gala just raised the most money ever, right? In its history. And I mean, what an amazing theme this year. So it's just interesting. I think it probably depends on what you're raising money for and sort of culturally what is important to people. But my personal preference is sitting down one-on-one with individuals, understanding what their interests are, and then connecting them with those opportunities. I'd much rather, I mean, I love a gala as an attendee, but as a fundraising professional, I'd rather just be the attendee, quite
Yeah.
frankly. But the other cool thing about it is you can highlight your cause, you can highlight your impact, you can highlight individuals who have made a big mark in your community, which is really cool. And so all of those pieces are really nice that you don't get in a different sort of way.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and also, yeah, the one-on-one, um, the time that you get with someone that if you were that maybe you wouldn't meet at one of those places
Right.
or wouldn't get to spend time with, or
Right.
maybe not, a lot of people don't like that kind of environment either. They just want to
Yeah.
privately kind of, here's a little bit of
Yeah.
the money.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that like at the like I was actually just at a gala recently, and it's a nice way to meet people that you don't know. And it's like, well, why are you here? And that's a great, and not in a bad way, right? Like, why are you here? But it's a great way to be like, oh, what's your connection to XYZ? Like, what is your connection to this? And that's where it really opens up doors to new people and new conversations and exposure, which again is a really great way to get people involved that maybe wouldn't naturally have a fit. So like if I took you to a University of Maryland fundraising event, you have no connection to Maryland, right?
Yeah.
But you may see something there that you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe they're doing research in XYZ. I'd love to learn more about it. Those sorts of things. So it
Yeah.
can really open up doors in that sort of way. And it's really our job just to follow up and be like, hey, it was great to see you. I'd love to learn more. Being really transparent about it. Like, it's my job is to raise money, and I'd love to learn more about you if you'd love to learn more about us, and just see where it goes from there. I think it's interesting. I know that we had talked about this a little bit before, but one of the most common questions I get is like, how do you ask for money? Like, I could never ask for money, right? And I actually thought that too. Like when I saw this world, I was like, oh my God, how do you like ask someone for money? And Sammy Popat, who is still in the field at University of Maryland, great colleague, described it as you're just connecting an interest with an opportunity. And it blew my mind. I was like, yeah, I'm not like forcing anybody to give money. I'm not like stealing their wallet, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
saying like, hey, getting to know someone, like we're getting to know each other, and like you've gotten to know other people, and then saying like, this is what we're doing. You might be interested in it. And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no, and that's fine, right? And what I've learned from the role too is that like every no gets you closer to a yes. And that has been a really good life lesson for me of like, don't look at no's as shutting a door. It's just getting you to the right direction. And not to take it personally. So you can meet really interesting people who you might think, oh my gosh, they're totally going to love this thing. And they're like, I'm good. So, and that's fine too.
And you might run into them later with some other, opportunity or something.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's cool.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, I want to talk about coaching and like when you coach people, are you doing, besides, I saw that you did soccer coaching, but besides that, like, do you do life coaching, or do you do like career change coaching, or kind of how do you?
Yeah, it's sort of under the umbrella of life coaching. So I actually was in a job transition when I decided to do coaching, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it, which there's like this theme in my life of like falling into fundraising, and then like I don't know exactly if I'm going to stay in fundraising or not, because at the time I had been solely in higher education, and I wanted to stay in higher ed. And I'm divorced, and my kids are here. We're in the same state, we're in the same city. And I just didn't, I was like, well, what am I going to do? Right. Like, I'm going to have to move. And then I was like, well, you don't have to move. And then, it was sort of that evolution of like, well, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do if I'm going to stay in philanthropy. So let me, while I'm still looking for another role, like let me take this class, and it'll keep me fresh and something new to do, and kind of figure out if this is something that I want to do professionally or just a learning experience for me, right? And so I did this great program, had a wonderful cohort, and really where my sort of focus is the pivots of life and the transitions of life. And where I think my sort of specialty is women who are like 30 to 60 years old, sort of in those transitionary stages of their life. And really stopping and thinking about like, what do you want? I think so often we don't think about what we want. We might have this yearning, this idea of like, I want something different. I don't know what it is. You can't even name it. And And maybe it's because you're transitioning jobs, maybe you're transitioning out of a relationship, maybe you even within your work, for instance, you just want another role and aren't sure how to get there. And it's really just that discovery process, which is so fun. And in that discovery process, it's a good chance for us to get to know if we would work well together, if this is even the right fit in terms of, I've had clients come to me and I'm like, you actually need to see a therapist. Like, I am not a therapist, and what you're talking about is not in my wheelhouse and sounds like you should probably talk to a therapist and see if that's the right fit for you. So, someone who's thinking about a divorce, you're like, yes, sis, go ahead. But like, I'm not I'm not the one to like really lead you through that and get through the emotional stuff, right? Like, and it's a fine line. And I mention that because I think some coaches go a little too far, quite frankly, with where our expertise is and where we can help people. And so I really love going through that dreaming and designing process and uncovering, what do you want to do, and make it bigger, make it bigger, make it so big, right? And don't be afraid of success. I think that's another thing that I see often is like that fear of success, because it's really the fear of the unknown. And I'll be honest with this too, it's a lot of accountability. The individual is doing so much of it. I'm really just a guide along with them, pulling it out and helping them discover it, and then holding them accountable, right? And saying like, okay, you said you wanted to do this thing. Did you do this thing? If you didn't, why? If you did, great. What happened, right? And like, let's discover that and move forward. So that's where I am. So it's sort of twofold. It's the life pivot sort of thing, the big dreams pivot, how to get there. And then I've, in my career, actually, in managing teams, I've done a lot of leadership coaching, which is really fun, and developing the individual. And it's sort of a similar process. It's just much more tailored to the individual in that industry, and really that work environment as well, and what's going on in that work environment. The one thing I will tell listeners, the big takeaway is active listening. Like, if I could say one thing about like what we all could do better, including myself, is active listening and not listening to respond. And it's amazing how the world opens up to you when you actively listen to yourself and when you actively listen to others.
Wow. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
I think we could all work on. I know I need to work on that too.
Oh, we all do, right? Like, we all do. And it was something in the coaching program that was so hard, because like, if you came to me with something, I'm like, oh my God, I can tell you exactly what to do. That's not what we're doing, right? Like, it's not advice. This is not advice, because if I give you advice, I'm now putting myself onto you, and it's not your journey anymore, right? And so many times you're like,
Wow.
oh my gosh, I like totally know what you need to do right now. And that's when you have to take a step back and you're like, I don't know what you need to do right now. You know what you need to do right now, and we're going to get there together. But when you put yourself on into someone else's story like that, you're missing out so much potential that they can come up with themselves, which again is like so cool, right? Like, it's so cool to see that unravel and unfold unravel sounds bad, unfold for someone. And I don't know if you feel this way about yoga, which is the other thing that, like, I was sort of in a transitionary period, and I was like, I'm just going to sign up for yoga. Like, I don't, the 200-hour instruction, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I think it'll help with just me personally, with coaching, with just me as a human being. And that release of like, release the expectation, it's hard for me. And to practice it is like, I feel really silly saying this. Like, I have to practice it. So much of my life is controlled and about control for me. And like, I envy you that you're like, I can just do things and move along. And like, I love that in yoga, like, it's like, just do the practice and release the expectation and learn from it. Right. And so I think that's sort of that idea along with coaching as well. Like, release the expectation in a way, and let's do the journey to get there, and pivot as we need to, and adjust goals as we need to, as you discover more about yourself and about this process that you're going into.
I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's cool. And again, it's like it's fun because you're helping that individual. And I
Yeah.
think one of the questions that you had asked me earlier is like, is there a set time? And I think it's just really dependent on the individual. And it's really about like, well, how much time do you need? It could be 4 sessions, it could be 3 months, it could be, and I think that's in that designing period that you figure that out with someone. And it could be like, hey, I'll, see you later. And in 6 months, it's like, I want to check in. And that's good too. It's like a tune up kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I mentioned that because I think, coaching is a business and that's totally fine. And I would encourage people before they sign up for like a 6 month program or something like
Yeah.
that, just to give themselves a little time to figure out like, maybe you don't need 6 months, maybe you need a year, like just kind of being open to that, and maybe signing up for some individual or like a month-long session before going full tilt, because it's so individualized, like,
Yeah.
so it's
Also,
just interesting.
yeah, like you said before, even with podcasting, like also they need to make sure you guys are a good fit
Yeah.
together to work on their where they're
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think that like, I think it's totally fine. I've experienced this with therapists where it was like you were the right person at the right time, and then like you weren't. You know what I mean? Like the relationship developed enough, or like we got through this situation, and then it was like, oh, okay, like now we're done. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like using different coaches or instructors or whatever in your life, like it's good to have that diversity. Um, if you need it. And if you love your person, if you love your coach, if you love your yoga instructor, if you love your whatever it is, right? You're still doing like Billy Banks Taibo or whatever, like stick with it. If it's working for you, like go for it. But I don't think people should be fearful of being like, I think I want to try someone else or get a different perspective. And you probably know that from like being a hairstylist. Like, oh my gosh, it feels like such a betrayal if you try someone else. Like,
Well, I tell people too, if they come in, I'm like, listen, sometimes you gotta go somewhere else to get a different, like I have my set
right.
ideas and views, and what I came up in the hairdressing world
Mm-hmm.
are totally different from the women that have done it before me and the
Right.
women behind me. So
Yeah.
you've got to go find that tiny little tweak that you can find. Like, plus, I can cut somebody's hair 5 times in a row, and it's not going to look exactly the same,
Right.
but it could look 95% the same.
Right. Right.
But what happens if that's not what they were looking for?
Yeah.
Then really, hey, why don't you go check somebody else out and then come back or not?
Yeah.
Depending on if it worked out. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think you're right there. No expectations.
Yeah, no expectations. Be open. Be open to the journey, whether it's hair or work or yoga or whatever, whatever it is. Just being open to it.
Yeah, like or oh, I know what I want to talk to you about.
Yeah,
Running too. Same
yeah,
thing. Like expectations with just even starting running. Like you might not be able to run a mile.
yeah.
I mean, a person might not be able to run a mile. I don't even know if I did when I started,
I feel like
actually.
sometimes if I take a week off, I feel like I can't run a mile. Like it's crazy how fast like you are like, oh my gosh. It's well, wait, how did you get started in running?
My friend Rebecca, at 19, I think she was, got lymphoma,
Oh.
and she's great doing successful salon business now, but at 19 ended up getting lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I think.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it impacted she was like the sweetest, nicest, bright light person you could have working at the salon. And so we all were just so devastated for
Yeah.
her. And there's nothing you can do, right?
Right.
So I, I was like, I got to do something. So
Yeah.
I joined signed up for a half marathon
Oh,
with the
cool.
Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And I ended up moving the day of the half marathon, but I
Yeah.
went ahead and did other. I was like, I got to make up for it, so I did. I ended up doing a half marathon at some point, just not that one.
Gotcha.
But that's how I got started,
Yeah.
and I will say to anybody, hopefully, they don't have lymphoma, but that Leukemia Lymphoma Society, she was able to get help with medications that she needed
Hmm.
directly from them, which I thought, you always wonder if you're going to benefit from these companies that are helping
Right.
do this. And it's like, I mean, she had support groups to go to. I went
Wow.
to a couple information sessions and support groups with her, and then um, was able to get information for her to call and say, "Hey,
Wow.
do you help with this medication?"
Yeah.
So anyway, but then that kind of got me going, and because it was the desire to like make up for not doing the half marathon, I continued to, and then I think somewhere I got addicted to
Yeah.
running.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It's it is interesting. I love that you found an outlet, for your friend and a way to help like through running. I think that's really beautiful. Um, I started running, well, I played sports growing up and like running was always a punishment,
yeah,
right? It was like, or just like part of it, like you got to go run laps, you got to get the cardio, whatever. I was on team sports. And um, when I moved to Florida, I had a role where I realized pretty quickly, like, I'm not going to be friends with my colleagues, right? Like, this was a role, like a supervisory role that was like, I think this is like a topic for another time, but I think being a leader is very lonely. And that's like one of the things that I was not expecting. I was like, so much of my work life was also my social life at my previous institution. So that's a long way of saying I needed to find friends. And I was like, and I also need to like work out. And so I started looking up like mom groups, and I was not finding the mom groups that I like wanted. And I found this like women's running group, and I was like, oh, okay. So I like stalked the group for like maybe 3 months. And I hadn't been working out. So, like, I started like walking around my neighborhood and then doing a mile and then doing 2 miles walking, running. And once I got up to 3 miles and feeling like, okay, I can do this, like January 1, one of my resolutions was like, okay, you got to go to a run. And I was addicted. I like went home and I was like, oh my God, like, and I was so excited. And I've been running ever since. And it's such um, it's so mental for me, and like it's so positive for my mental health, but also like, today I did 6 miles, which I had no expectations of what to run, and we walked most of it, and all of us were just not feeling it. And it's like, like that's fine, right? Like, and other days, like I did 10 miles 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I felt great and felt like I could have kept running, so you just have to approach each run as like its own run. And I did the Disney Princess Half Marathon, which was so fun. I would recommend anyone to do it. And I had trained for like a time specifically. And it's in February in Orlando. So you're like, oh, it's going to be cool. Rachel, it was so hot. It was hot and humid. And at the starting line, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take pictures with every character. Like, I let go of the time. I had so much fun. I probably had like an additional 30 minutes to what I was expecting, but it was just awesome, right? And I think that's like the really cool thing about running is
yeah,
is you let go of those expectations. And sometimes you're fast, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're never fast. Sometimes you can run a lot or a little bit. And your body changes with it. Like you can change, or rather, I guess, like your running changes with your life and what you need at that time. So I
yeah,
think that's like a really cool thing I never expected to come out of running.
yeah. It reminds me of yoga, and so
Yeah.
I love being able to do both because
Yeah.
it does remind you that you just got to let whatever's going to happen happen
Yeah.
and be okay. It's okay.
It's okay. It is all right. I just had an instructor l- last weekend. I think it was last weekend. She had taught for almost 40 years. Iyengar yoga in New York, like may have met Mr. Iyengar, like ridiculous, right? And she was like tough and no nonsense. And like she was a substitute and very different than the person who normally teaches that class. And you could feel it in the room. Like half the class was kind of like, oh my God, what is this? And then half the class was just open to it. And she actually stopped the class at one point and was like, look, like, I don't want to disappoint anybody, but the whole thing, not to get into all of it, but she was trying to show how the poses should be done correctly. And we were holding them for about 2 minutes and she was being really meticulous. And I love it. That's the type of yoga I'm studying. And it kind of drives me nuts in class when you're in like a triangle pose with 60 people and there's 60 different versions of it. And so I appreciated it. And she just said, like, look, let go of those expectations, just take it in, be open to what I'm telling you. And you could feel the class change. You could really feel that shift of being more open to it. And at the end of class, like you could tell people were like, that was a great class. And I was like, yeah, like, yes, it wasn't like the other instructor and that's okay. Like,
right.
Yeah.
And I talk about that all the time. Like it might be the pose that's challenging. It might be the music that you don't love that you need to put in the back of your mind. It might be the teacher. You're like not feeling the vibe, but you know what? Use it as a challenge. Use it as a way to get through your suffering to get to the end of class or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. And it is so funny because like I feel like every class that I'm in, when it's like the last 15 minutes of class, I'm like, I don't know why. It's just in my head. I'm like, oh my God, I can't go another 15 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, you can. Yes, you can. And you have. And maybe you need to adjust a little bit. But that's the other thing. And it's similar to running. It's like that adjustment that you can make in those moments. Even if it's just like a little tiny adjustment and it makes such a difference. It's really cool, right? And it's you being in touch with yourself in a different way than you normally are, right? Like right now, I'm not thinking about my breath. I'm not thinking about how my shoulders feel or whatever, right? And like when you hone into that, it's so cool. You're like, oh, wow.
I can change it.
Yeah, it's really neat.
It is cool. Well, I am looking at the time.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to keep you longer. So I'll give you your last question.
Okay.
So I think we covered everything. Is there, before I give you your last question, I know I sent you the topics and everything. Do you feel like you
I think so. I'll just keep
yourself?
talking. I'm one of those people where if you were like, Megan, go talk to a wall for 30 minutes, I'd be like, I'm on it. So yeah, I think we've covered a lot of stuff. This was super fun. And we didn't have daiquiris. We'll have to do it with daiquiris.
Oh my gosh. What a good idea.
Next time.
That's a good idea. We should do that. We should do that like once a month. Come on, for like 10 minutes.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
And just do like we'll figure out a name for it.
Rapid fire or something. Yeah, it'd be fun.
Yes, I love that. I love doing that. I did that with someone, one of my guests, I forget. I'm like, all right, I got rapid fire questions. I mean, it wasn't that fast, but anyway. But all right, last question, if I can, again, articulate it correctly. How has your perspective of the self or the way you view life changed over the years?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And when you asked it at the beginning, I was like, oh shit, how am I going to answer this? Like, it's like such a big question. But actually, I think our conversation, I sort of answered it for myself, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think right now, what I would say is that being open to the process, right? Like just being so much more open to life. And I struggle with that. Like I struggle with controlling things and wanting to know what the outcome's going to be and making sure everything's like not perfect, but like there's 3 steps and I know what the 5th one's going to be. And if it's not that, it's this or, whatever. And I think that served me well for a very, very long time. And I think I missed out on a lot of life because of that, because I was so focused on the outcome that I wanted versus multiple outcomes that could happen. And I think what I learned, in really the last 10 years, and it might be maturity, I think life has kicked my ass a little bit in the last 10 years, as it tends to do. I'm in an getting my ass kicked phase in my life a little bit right now.
Or maybe you'll change it to kicking ass.
Yeah, and I think I'm kicking ass too.
I think you're kicking ass too.
I'm like really focused on saving right now, right? I know this is tangential, and my cat Daisy just needed surgery, and I was like, well, there goes that saving. Like, oh my God. But so I was like, very funny, universe, like, ha ha ha, like this is another little like gotcha. But I think just being open to the journey and letting things unfold. And the more I do that, and it is a daily practice, Rachel, like it is something that daily and in the moment, multiple times a day, I have to remind myself. But like, life has been so much more awesome, even in the harder parts, like of being open to receive from others and to receive support and to see like, this isn't going as planned, but what's going to happen, and like, I know I'm going to get through it, and I know I'm going to be okay on the other side. So let me just kind of see what happens versus like, I've got to do XYZ. And so, yeah, I think, if I was maybe talking to my younger self, it would be like, let go, because trust in yourself, be open, ask for help. And life is going to be so much more than what you're trying to direct it to be, and that's something that has been a wonderful discovery, and it's still really, really hard. Like, it's super hard for me. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good answer. I like that,
What
because
would you say?
That is a good question. I guess same kind of, I guess letting go of what I thought was supposed to happen, and
Mm-hmm.
just let kind of the same thing, like the narrative that I was given along the
Yeah.
way, or I gave myself along the
Yeah.
way, to let go. I mean, and there's like, I'm thinking about specific things that I purposely was like, just let it happen.
Yeah.
It's such an active, in the moment thing that you have to really stop and be like, let it,
Right.
don't try to control it. See, I'm saying it too, like, yeah,
Yeah.
let it happen. So I would say, yes, don't, trying not to control my narrative or society's narrative
Mm-hmm.
on what's supposed to happen, and just
Yeah.
see. I find myself, as I get older, getting more curious about
Yeah.
things, I
Yeah.
guess. So,
I was just about to say, like, the other piece that I would say within this is like, when I feel resistance to something and I don't know why I'm feeling resistance, be curious about it.
yes.
That is a cue for me to like lean into that a little bit more, figure out what's going on there a little bit more. And sometimes there's a lot of good reasons why I'm being resistant. And then other times it's like, whoa, I just never had that viewpoint before, or whatever it is. But that curiosity, I think, is the balance for me when I start getting like, oh, nope, let's get in the box. Like,
Yeah.
and like, I can totally control this outcome. It's like, just being more curious with it has been super helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and the podcast, I think, probably helps too,
Yeah.
like getting different views of
Yeah.
things. So,
Totally. And I think the other thing too is it's one of the few things in my life. Well, I shouldn't say few things, but it's a very large part of my life where it's completely self-directed. Like,
yeah.
I've been really consistent with it, but I don't beat myself up if I have a hard week and I can't release an episode. That's only happened a couple times. And I took a little break in December, and I was like, no, you have to be consistent. And I was like, it's fine. You want to enjoy the holidays. You said this is the last one for a while. You'll be back in a month. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's all good. And having, like you said, like that narrative in your head of like, this is what it should be. And it's like, wait a minute, where did you get that from? Like, where did that even come from? Right. And
From them, whoever they are up
they're
there.
out there. Yeah. 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 And I'm like, you're making this up. You know what I mean? Like, no one told you this. You're just sort of making it up. And maybe it's the path that you want to follow, and maybe that works for you, or maybe you want to do something else. And, for all like 3 of my listeners, it's fine. It's worked so far.
I say that all the time. Like, hello,
Yeah.
listener.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how many I have. I don't really check. I will say that I looked at the analytics in Spotify, and the podcast has been listened to in 9 countries. And I have a suspicion a couple of those are bots, but I'll take it. I was like, oh, that's so
Yes.
cool. Like, that's so cool. But yeah, so at least 9 listeners across the globe is, like
That's
all 9 of you. It's really cool you're listening.
I always say I have one friend that she's like, "Oh my gosh, I just listened to your podcast and you had so and so on," and I'm like, oh, "You listened to my
Yeah.
podcast?"
Yeah, isn't
And
that cool?
so now I always am like, "Hey Grace, how are you doing, Grace? Here we
Yeah.
are, my favorite listener, Grace."
Yeah. And
But
I want to be mindful of your time as well, but I am curious. Sorry, I'm like turning the tables on you. Like, what
I
would you
know.
say? Because I feel like that's from my perspective how I answered it. But like, what have you learned from your guests? Like, what's a through line that you feel like you've learned from the guests that you've had on your podcast?
I don't know. Oh my gosh.
And I'll give you a second to think about it. It's something that you just said that made me like one of the things that I've learned is like the most successful people, whether it's people that I met before or in my podcast, but it's really been highlighted in the podcast stories, is like just doing something for the love of it versus the outcome. And like that's where the success happens. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And it kind of ties into what we were talking about, but it's really just being like, I just love this thing. And so I did it. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, and now you're, doing whatever you're doing. So that's been really cool to see as well. Like that through line of different passions and hobbies and industries of just following that love and passion that they have.
Yeah, I think, and if I could probably think of a deeper answer to that question. I love the openness that they're willing to share.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to me,
Yeah.
like this.
Right.
Not. I mean, I know most of them, but some of them I don't know that well. And to
Mm-hmm.
come on and let me ask these questions and they. I don't know. They may be really good actors, but they seem to like the connection and like the sharing of just their interests or stories.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
And I came up with this thing today when I talk to myself, because I do. And it was like I was telling you before, like, do I want to continue with this or not? And I can't let go of it.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, because maybe it's more of a passion than a talent. And I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, it's a passion, not a talent. Or maybe it will grow into something that I get better at, or I don't even know if I have to be that good, as long as I can find questions that people can answer
Yeah.
with their own passion, I guess. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
That's my story. My chair is falling apart.
Oh
Not falling
no.
apart. It adjusts. I don't know about office chairs. I don't normally sit in one, so
Oh,
it's moving. But
interesting. That was your office chair being like, it's time to wrap it up. Like,
maybe so. Usually it's the dog barking or something.
yeah,
but,
exactly. Exactly.
but
This was so much fun, Rachel. Thank you so much. This
Thank
was
you.
awesome.
I really enjoyed this, and I love you allow it to flow very nicely, and I appreciate that. But yes, also don't leave.
Okay.
We'll say goodbye here, but then
Okay.
we'll talk after.
Sounds
So,
good.
thanks everyone for listening, all 5 of you, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.